Forkast.News is your gateway to all things blockchain. We do the deep dive and the due diligence on the blockchain projects and platforms that matter, because we aim to be the most reliable source of intellectual discourse and insight that inform, educate, and bridge the gap between the blockchain industry and the mainstream. Welcome to this special edition here in Paris. I'm Forkast.News Editor-in-Chief Angie Lau. So we are here at OECD Global Blockchain Policy Forum, where thought leaders from across industries and certainly at the highest level of governments are really situated here. I just had the pleasure of sitting on a panel with David Treat.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. He is the Managing Director of Global Blockchain Lead at Accenture. And really your job at Accenture is to engage with enterprise leaders from across all industries about blockchain. So let's get started. David, welcome.
Thank you.
First of all, understanding blockchain is a difficult task unto itself. How do you start those conversations?
It usually features not using the word blockchain for about the first hour, right? And just literally just talking about the world that we've been living in, right? So since databases have been invented, we've been living in this world where we've just had this orthodoxy that I couldn't possibly trust your data and you couldn't possibly trust mine. So we're gonna message data back and forth with each other, and our ops teams are gonna reconcile. And when you walk around the operations team of any industry's floor, you hear stuff like, did you get it? How much was it? 8, 10, 12, it's this constant reconciliation of data. And so we help executives think through kind of the world they're living in, and then introduce the notion of, well, what if that could be different? And what if actually through technology, you could be confident when you're working with a counterparty that you see what they see. And if I know that I see what you see, I don't have to message to you. We don't have to reconcile. We're not going to have a trade break and misunderstandings about data. We're not going to have data quality issues. And so, kind of step them through the implications of the data infrastructure, data world, business logic of today, get them grounded in the possibilities of then how could it be different, and then start to introduce the blockchain concepts. And,
the first and foremost, blockchain as a technology is trustless, which is in terms of language, a very interesting way.
We're going to come back to that. It's another inadequate term.
We will get back to it. Trustless in that, and you've heard it, but in that trust is baked in. I don't need to know you, David, to know that as we engage on this platform, I trust that this process, this transaction.
And I don't use that word so when I talk to clients and we talk about that component of what this technology is about, I find that masks what's really going on.
So what's really going on?
So what's really going on is that for the first time ever, we have the ability through technology to have uniqueness in the digital world. And if you think about the concept of uniqueness means you can prove there's only one of them. There's only one of it, right? In the digital world we've been living in, because of copy and paste, we've never had just one, right? You have no idea. I share a piece of information with you. You could copy, paste, a zillion times and share it with your friends and family, and it's gone. It's everywhere. Now suddenly through the technology, we have uniqueness, so I can prove it exists once and only once, and then also embedded in that is tamper evidence. So if I know it exists once and only once, and I know no one's messed with it, and I can be confident that you and I see the same thing, to me, that's what's probably meant in most instances where someone uses the word trust, meaning they can trust that there is only one of it. They can trust that no one else has changed its state in some sort of way that the community didn't agree with, right? And that it's auditable and you have that full provenance. And so I find that it's much more helpful to talk about the core capabilities at a more precise level, to help people really understand what's going on. Because if you just throw around the word trust, I don't know whether I'm trusting the operator of the system to do it right, which we've done that forever, right? I trust that when I log onto my bank and I look at my balance, that it's the right balance, right? How many of us balance a checkbook anymore? Like, we were done with that 20 years ago. So it's, the word trust is one of those inadequate terms. And it's much better to talk about the precise aspects of what the technology actually does.
It is still critical to doing business. It is what legacy businesses like auditors, like lawyers, actually derive value for themselves and for their families, because they reinforce that interaction between businesses. And so if we talk about blockchain, really kind of disrupting even that process,
Sure.
where does that leave all of us?
I think it leaves, well, two things. I think shortly, the notion of blockchain, if we do this right, is going to be transparent to the end users. We shouldn't be inflicting database structures on conversations with end users, right? You shouldn't log on to an app. It's a system of record. It's not the system of engagement, right? The systems of engagement, you're still gonna log onto an app. You're still gonna, get on your laptop and you're gonna look at a presentation layer. You don't know what's behind that presentation layer as an end user, and you shouldn't, right? It should just be easy, simple to use, and transparent. So there's one aspect, and I'm not answering your direct question, but there's one aspect where I think it becomes transparent to the end users. On the other side, what I think that we're gonna do is build up a degree of, there's going to be a redefinition of the relationship between individuals and the service providers and authorities that they work with. So today, we talked about this on the panel, right? Today, the winning digital business is the one that accumulates the most data, and they get it from anywhere that they possibly can. And we've lost any degree, we've lost privacy.
We've become the commodity.
We're the commodity. We've lost any degree of privacy or control, and our data is out there and it's everywhere, and you don't have any ability to track it. Tomorrow, we're going to have the ability to own our own data, to be able to very deliberately share it with a service provider or an authority, element by element. I want to share my, age and height with you, and weight and home address with someone else, and I'm not showing you my whole driver's license, et cetera. I can be much more focused about what I want to share, but most importantly, I can share that data with it encoded with the intent of why I want you to have it, the approval that I want you to have it, the rights I'm giving you to use it, and your obligations back to me as to what you owe me around it. And then later I can actually revoke it, right? And so from an end user perspective, I think we're entering into a period where the winning digital business is the one that develops the most trust. Now, I almost used the word trust myself. I also almost swore. The winning digital business is the one that creates the most compelling personalized relationship with a customer, where you're negotiating that exchange, that they want you to have the data to get a service, and they know that, and the rules are encoded as to how you can use it, and you can't just simply sell it to someone else, because if you move that piece of data, it doesn't have my cryptographic signature that says I gave it to you. If that suddenly shows up in someone else's data store, that auditor should find that and say that's not right. That wasn't, and so we're going to see the reclamation of privacy, control. And it's going to take time to get there, but that is absolutely the direction of travel of regulations, of our social dialogue, and of the technical capabilities, where we can now have that ability.
So you work at a very high level, the Ethereum Alliance, you're a part of that, so you know your technology. But
I sit on the board of the Linux Hyperledger project,
yes,
as well as the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and a few other of the bodies. We've at Accenture, one of the things that we're not a product company.
yes,
Right, and very fiercely defend that. We're always focused on being a services company and providing value to our clients, stitching together the best of the tech platforms and capabilities that are out there. So it's always been very important to us to be part of the core dialogue as to how the technology is evolving, both at a technical and a functional and business level.
But you chose Ethereum and you chose Hyperledger. These are two concepts.
Yep.
That are very specific.
Mm-hmm.
So you chose one protocol, and you chose Hyperledger, which is really taking a look at private enterprise and blockchain solutions there. And some would say, as the innovation and technology is changing, it's certainly many blockchain protocols with unique characteristics that are very specific, that maybe should talk to one another. And then from a private or a Hyperledger type concept to a public, the language of decentralization, and truly not owned by any one entity, but certainly the system itself is self-policed, self-enforced, self-governed. Where do you stand on that? Do you think at some point
I want us to use totally different language.
I know.
It's
constantly changing.
let's take the whole, the three selves you just used, right?
Okay.
that's wildly misunderstood as to who it is, right? So there are actual operators of the blockchain ecosystem. There are a defined set of companies that have chosen to make the investments to build their mining capabilities and run the network, and those operators exist, and it's not the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of end users. It's a set of companies that have gotten together, in effect, whether they're mining pools or infrastructure players, but they're deliberately providing a service and operating the company. And so the reason I don't like the public versus private blockchain concept is we're masking the valuable conversation around separating the user population of whether you're having public or private users of a system, which is what we should reserve that word for, versus the conversation around who's operating it.
So what if I want to decide that I'd prefer nobody really control any access points, that I want to participate in something that we can all kind of control, that there's not any one access point, that there are
as
many.
Long as you know long as you know who's operating that system and you're comfortable with it, that's where we're going to have these new social contracts and decisions. One of the things that we're exploring with corporate, enterprise, and government clients is where are you comfortable in which context and what rules. Now, every corporate, enterprise, and government agency has care of duty to its end users, is there to provide consumer protection, system protection, market protection, and those aspects then require specific obligations of the operators of those systems to be able to support that. And so what we're focused on building and the protocols that we avail ourselves on are those that we can get into that contractually obligated, SLA-based, auditable, regulated services by the operators of the system.
We're talking about a brand new operating system, one that looks very different from, my parents' generation, our generation, my child's generation, and yet, we're all trying to figure out how not only to use this emerging operating system, but are we thought about as it's being architected? What is the social contract, the business logic, and even the governmental and regulatory aspect of this operating system that's changing by the second?
It's changing by the second, but there are truisms that we have found in all of the work that we've done. This is going to get overly philosophical, but I think if I look at through the dawn, from the dawn of human existence and all of the social constructs that we've created, I think there's some fundamental things that we've always required. I think as humans in any social, economic, financial, governmental context, we've always demanded that there is a method of recourse. There's someone to fix it when it goes wrong. We formed legal systems around it. We have the expectations in these systems. I think that's an example of a truism. And so what we do is evaluate for the particular business process, the particular business flow, can it meet the requirements and expectations of the users around recourse? And the fallback, and it's too frequently talked about, is you'll default to the legal system for recourse, or you'll default to a community vote to change the platform. That's all well and good for certain types of issues, and it's a great backstop. However, when I have the $100 million transaction, or I'm standing at a border and I can't get my child across the border, or there's something that has to be fixed operationally now, that doesn't work. You need constructs to be able to provide different levels of recourse for different types of business processes. And so that's what we always do, is we basically look at the user need, the business transformation we're trying to achieve, and then what platforms and constructs will then match those needs. Do you need someone who can fix something in minutes or seconds, in which case you are never going to rely on the legal system as your actual form of recourse? You're going to need an operator of the system who can play that circuit breaker, that choke point, or the auditor. And the most valuable thing in this whole space is that through the technology and through the possibilities, we're now reimagining it. And so the notion of an intermediary will wildly change across business ecosystems, and it should, and it's going to evolve in really creative, innovative ways. But there are, in most business cases, in every corporate enterprise or government construct, there are roles that need to be played. And the right question to ask is, who do you want to play them and how, now that the technology enables something different? It can, and where it's unhelpful is where we talk in these binary languages of it's just centralized or decentralized. There are no intermediaries.
Let's use real world language. Let's use real world language and real world applications of what are businesses doing now in the blockchain space. Accenture World Economic Forum just came out with a really expansive study. A lot of businesses are very interested in it. Certainly, it's transforming industries as we speak. We're not necessarily seeing it. You're seeing it. Yeah. What are the real world applications that will shift the reality for regular Joes like me in the next 6 to 12 months?
A few of my favorites, right? So the Risk Stream Collaborative used to be known as the Risk Block Alliance. Both of those are a mouthful for me to say. I had to practice. The Risk Stream Collaborative was formed by the Risk Institutes in the U.S., which was the North America insurance industry policy education and lobbying forum for the insurance industry. They recognized the value of this technology and what it could potentially do, and they formed a consortium and stood up a brand new entity within its structure, where they've done it right. They created it on a very egalitarian basis. They brought in 33 of North America's largest insurance companies. The impressive part was this was an industry-wide effort, right? The members of it cover more than 65% of the North American insurance market. So this is one of my favorite examples where this is the type of work that we're really pushing for and working to use our relationships, across our client base to drive ecosystem-wide. They focused on the first use case, which was you and I smash our cars into each other. The proof of insurance that both of us have to produce, the first notice of loss. It involves you, me, the two insurance companies, the police. Traditionally multiple messages and reconciliation and lots of phone calls back and forth. Now through using the platform that we've built. Able to tremendously simplify that process. And in its full grandeur, it's just gone live this summer. In its full grandeur, it's a multi-billion-dollar use case that's going to make it the next time you and I get into an accident in North America and our insurance companies are part of it, we're going to have a much simpler experience. You'll get paid faster and at the end of the day, you may not know it's blockchain, but it's going to be simple. It's going to be simpler.
That is actually how this conversation is evolving when we talk about technology. That the end user is not even going to notice what efficiencies are being felt. They're just going to...
If we do it right,
if it's done right. So now in the backdrop of OECD, in the backdrop of all of these governmental, intergovernmental, government, trade, finance, enforcement agencies like the SEC, are these conversations getting it right? The role of regulators and the role of governments.
So I've spent my whole career...
The innovation of technology.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off. I've spent my whole career in financial services. Yeah. I've really actually incredibly enjoyed over the past couple of years playing this global role and getting a cross-industry vantage point and learning other industries. But if I focus on SEC, financial services, the global regulatory bodies that are involved, if you would ask me 10 or 15 years ago, particularly coming out of the financial crisis and the wave of regulation that was started, if you had asked me kind of, how I would predict a new wave of innovation would go, I never would have. I've been very pleasantly surprised at the degree of engagement. I'm spending a ton of time in DC. I'm spending a ton of time with regulators around the world. They are reaching out for information. They are using language about being proactive about how they need to modernize regulation. They're engaging in the discussion. They're hiring technical experts in ways that I just hadn't seen to this extent previously. So I'm very bullish on how the global regulatory environment is engaging. There's it's going to come across wrong. There's a somewhat entertaining, little competition between the regulators around, can I create the better innovation sandbox or innovation backdoor into my region? And in particular, the stance of the smaller jurisdictions, which have a very innovation, forward-looking, innovative stance on their ecosystem, willing to spend money and engage. We just did the first ever central bank to central bank exchange of fiat currency in a DLT form.
Canada to Singapore.
Canada to Singapore. So the MAS and the Bank of Canada. The MAS has had a very deliberate plan structure of how they're going to explore this whole technology space, and project after project is really kind of proving to themselves that it can work, and always balanced between there's the part of the organization that will always need to play the safety, security, soundness, risk focused part of it. That can't go away. It's critically important for all of us, so we don't get in trouble again. But the balance and the integration with the innovation side of these organizations is spectacular. So I'm very bullish on it. Where a lot of them are our clients, we're engaged with them. I think it's going as well as it could be. And the OECD, the different, from what I'm learning about, I wasn't here last year, which now I really regret, because being here this year, it's just been a phenomenal set of content and speakers, and I'm very much looking forward to next year. The group of central banks and regulators and the quality of the conversation and the intent to really engage productively is fantastic. So I'm incredibly optimistic. I try to keep that wider perspective. Sure, on a daily basis, we'll always have frustrations with each other, but I think it's going incredibly well.
Well, I think the first step to trust does boil down to conversations face to face, and certainly conversations like this. Yeah. Thanks for helping us lift the hood, look around at the engine of this blockchain technology that is shaping our lives as we speak. David Treat, pleasure.
Nice. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.